Episode number 3 of the UFO History series covers the years 1933 to 1945. During this time, we begin to get recorded witness testimony, and also at the end of this time period, we have the very first nuclear explosion, which begins a completely new era in UFO history. If you like these videos and appreciate the work that we do, please like and subscribe to support the channel. It's July 1st, 1933, and we're in Chrysville, a town near Morristown, Pennsylvania. A man observed a faint violet light in a field between Chrysville and Morristown. Walking to it, he found an ovoid object 3 meters in diameter and 2 meters thick, with a circular opening similar to a vault door. Pushing it open, he found the room full of violet light and observed many instruments, but there were no occupants. However, there was a strong smell of ammonia. It's August 1st of 1933, and we're in Krasnyye, Chetai. The boy, Vien Bronyukov, and his friends looked up from the play to see a star move across the daytime sky. It moved at a quick pace, changing heading to the northwest. The children watched the craft for about 10 minutes before telling their parents. "1933, Nambour, Australia. A boy is playing in his backyard and sees a little disc about 30 centimeters in diameter hovering. He reaches out to grab it, only to have his hands burned, and then it becomes enveloped in a white mist. Later on that evening, he's not feeling very well, and his hands break out in white blisters all over them. August 1st, 1933, St. Petersburg, Russia. In the evening hours near Petrovsky Gate, Comrade A. Ignatvia observed a luminous sphere flying only a few feet above ground. Silently, the craft quickly flew from the north to the south in an almost perfect straight line. Ethnologist Pierre Ichak was studying a tribe in Ethiopia when they noticed a metallic saucer-shaped craft hanging in the afternoon sky above the sun. Just a couple months later, in December, during the Ethiopian War, a dish-shaped object hovered motionless in the sky above and was seen by many witnesses. It's 1935, and we're in Nipawin, Canada. 3 witnesses saw a landed UFO at Nipawin and watched as several little entities in silver suits ascended and descended a ladder. Square imprints and burnt areas were seen and photographed at the location the next day. It's 1936, and we're in the Basque province of Guipuzcoa. A sighting in the midst of the Spanish Civil War. English novelist and former soldier Valentine Williams and 2 others were driving from General Franco's headquarters in Burgos to Biarritz, France. The sightings occurred at 4:18 p.m. in the Basque province of Guipuzcoa, about 75 miles from San Sebastian. Williams' companions gasped in amazement. He turned to see what he thought was a flare or tracer round on a course at right angles to the road, heading northward at an amazing velocity. Williams later described it as like a stream of white smoke. As it went, it burst into a bright orange flame. It's December of 1938, and we're at the Esterhazy Cemetery in Saskatchewan, Canada. A ghostly light seen at the Tabor Cemetery, 17 miles northeast of Esterhazy, caused a sensation in Saskatchewan for several weeks in 1938. It was front page news with extensive coverage on the radio. The Tabor light was sometimes described as a ball of fire, slightly reddish or pinkish in color, and occasionally flickering. Witnesses always said the glow appeared to be directed inward. The light never illuminated the surrounding area, and it would either dance among the trees skirting the cemetery or speed along the road that ran past it. It's October 30th, 1938, and we're listening to a CBS radio program in the United States. Orson Welles' War of the Worlds was played on an episode of his weekly CBS radio program, The Mercury Theater on the Air. His show was heard across the U.S. and caused some consternation, as many people were not aware that it was a piece of science fiction and not an actual news report.
The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Mercury Theater and star of these broadcasts, Orson Welles.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
It's 1939, and we're in Washington, D.C. It is reported that Cordell Hull, the Secretary of State under Franklin Roosevelt, took his cousin Turner Holt on a tour of something interesting in a sub-basement of the Capitol building. There they saw 4 large glass jars, each holding an unknown creature. There was also a wrecked round craft of some kind nearby. It's 1940, and we're in Bata, Hungary. A UFO that looks like a fiery cartwheel is seen ascending from a local hilltop. It's 1940, and we're in the skies over Japan. While flying over Japan, Wing Commander D.J. Blakesley sighted an object he described as having red, green, and white lights. The craft moved rapidly to escape detection. Blakesley was guided by ground radar. He was reported to be stable and reliable. The Air Force officially ruled the sighting to be Jupiter, although it was tracked by radar. It's 1940, and we're in the skies over planet Earth. With the start of World War II, our pilots around the world begin to see what they call Foo Fighters. These glowing orbs, or balls of light, fly much faster than their crafts are capable of, take off at right angles, fly around their craft, and perform other maneuvers that we are incapable of. It's August 1st, 1941, and we're in San Jose, California. Cameraman Michael Conversa photographed 13 star-like objects near the position of the moon. It's 1941, and we're in the skies over Germany. German aviatrix Hanna Reich sees a UFO speeding past her plane at 66,000 feet. It's July of 1941, and we're in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. The Reverend William Huffman was asked to come to a plane crash site and give last rites. When he arrived at the scene, it was clear that it was no airplane. It was a silver disc craft that was crashed and had cracked open. There were 3 little standard gray aliens out on the ground, and one of them was still alive. He was able to give last rites to the creature before it passed away. Upon looking inside of the UFO, he was able to see a variety of gauges and instruments, along with some very small chairs, and a band went around the interior of the UFO that had hieroglyphics on it that he could not understand and thought were very mysterious. The Air Force came in, shut the entire thing down, swore everybody to secrecy, and hauled off all the materials. It's February 25th of 1942, and we're in the skies over Los Angeles, California. It is 3 months after Japan attacks Pearl Harbor and draws the U.S. into World War II. The Los Angeles public is further on edge as the U.S. mainland had just been attacked for the first time 2 days earlier in Santa Barbara at the Elwood oil field. This was the first time the war had been brought to the U.S. homeland, and people were in shock as a Japanese submarine had surfaced and shelled the oil facility. At 2:15 a.m., LA radar spots an unknown object headed in from the ocean. A green alert is issued, allowing the anti-aircraft batteries to fire. Air raid sirens are activated. Spotlights are trained at the sky, and a total blackout is declared. Hundreds of thousands of LA residents are awoken to the sirens and look outside to see the searchlights combing the sky. Ultimately, the searchlights converge on an orangish object hovering over the city. This is when the anti-aircraft installations start opening up and firing at the object. During the next hour, over 1,400 shells were fired. Witnesses said that many of the artillery shells hit the object and it had no effect. After an hour, it left. 5 people died that night from a combination of heart attacks and car accidents directly attributed to the evening's events. There were a variety of damages caused by the artillery following back down and impacting various areas of the city. In classic form, the military's follow-up reports declared that this event was caused by a series of weather balloons.
Anti-aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific wartime this morning. The anti-aircraft guns began barking during a blackout ordered by the 4th Interceptor Command at 2:25 a.m. The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach. Army officials declined to comment on the possibility that the object might have been a blimp. However, it required nearly 30 minutes to travel some 25 miles, far slower than an airplane. Watchers on the rooftop of the Columbia Broadcasting Building in the heart of Hollywood could plainly see the flashes of guns and searchlights sweeping the skies in a wide arc along the coastal area. Concussion of the shells could be felt in downtown Los Angeles, 15 miles away. U.S. Army planes quickly took to the dark skies, but whether they contacted the object has not been announced. Army officials say they will not comment until they receive a full report of the action. Although some watchers say they saw airplanes in the air, semi-official sources say they probably were the U.S. Army's pursuit. Several observers say they saw 1 or more planes spotlighted by 20 or 30 searchlights. The object moved southward, presumably over Huntington Park at the western edge of Los Angeles, and on southward to about Long Beach on the coast. By 3:30 a.m., observers said the object appeared to be over the south of Long Beach. Searchlights closely followed the object down the coast and kept it centered in their glare. Shells frequently could be seen bursting near the object, but none appeared to hit it. The shooting stopped about 3:30 a.m. The shooting brought warfare to the front door of this city of 1.25 million population for the first time since December 7th. Already it was alert to the presence off the Southern California coast of a Japanese submarine which had pumped 25 shells into an oil field north of Santa Barbara Monday evening. Because of the presence of the submarine, a 3-hour alert was ordered at dusk last night, and civilian authorities stood at their posts while the Army and Navy continued their search for the submersible. The evening alert ended at 10:23 p.m., but another was sounded at 2:22 a.m., and the blackout followed within 3 minutes. It covered Los Angeles County from Santa Monica to Pomona. At 2:27, all Southern California radio stations were ordered off the air, except those in San Diego. Approximately 20 minutes after the firing died down, the ship returned and headed westward from Long Beach toward Santa Monica. The guns went into action again, hurling round after round of shells at the object. The second barrage appeared to be closer to downtown Los Angeles, since watchers could hear the concussion of the guns more clearly, and the flash of bursting shells was brighter. Then the ship disappeared for the second time over the ocean.
It's February 26th of 1942, and we're in the Pacific Ocean. The day after the attack of L.A., the Royal Netherlands Navy vessel, the Tromp, was out in the Pacific Ocean and was surveyed by a metallic saucer-shaped craft that sped around the ship before continuing on its way. It's June 25th, 1942, and we're in the skies over Happy Valley, Netherlands.
In 1942, in June, we went on the bombing mission. I was flying bombers, Wellingtons, over Ruhr, or otherwise so-called Happy Valley. And the trip was, we performed everything what was necessary, dropped the bombs on the target, and on the way back, while we were flying over the Zuiderzee, which is the part of Holland, my rear gunner reported an aircraft approaching from the rear. I told him that if this object comes too close, then we'll have to open the fire on him. And my idea was that perhaps it was a German fighter aircraft equipped with the searchlight in the nose. So when this thing came close, I wouldn't take any chance on it, and I told my rear gunner to give him a blast. So then he opened the fire on him, maybe 200 yards. And at that distance, this object was almost the size of the moon, which was also visible at the same time, maybe possibly a bit bigger. We used the tracers in the machine guns. There were 4 machine guns in the rear turret. And while this rear gunner was shooting, we could follow exactly the trajectory of the shells which were entering that particular target. Now, the peculiar thing about it was that those were just going in, and that was the end of it. They wouldn't fall down. And so-called tracers. Those tracers would just enter, and that was it. Now, that lasted for possibly, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. And after that time, this shining object suddenly changed the position, and at a terrific speed moved over to our port side, almost at the same distance, about 200 yards from the wing. And then it stayed there. Of course, then both rear gunner and the front gunner opened the fire on my order, and I could see the tracers entering the target again from under two angles, at which I was sure that this was pretty close to 200 yards then, because you could see the angle of crossing the tracers. After a while, it moved up, took off at fantastic speed at the at least 45 degrees angle, and they just disappeared between the stars.
It's 1942, and we're on a bombing mission flight from Burma to China. U.S. bomber pilots flying missions from Burma to China reported being buzzed and circled by glittering objects. Instruments failed to operate until the objects flew off. It's 1942, and we're in Tianjin, China. Masujiro Kiru was going through his father's photo album from the China campaign just before World War II when he found a photograph of a flying object. His father, now deceased, has bought the picture from a Tianjin street photographer, apparently right after it was taken. In the photograph, one can see a low-domed, disc-shaped object approaching a few hundred feet above the heads of the people, many of whom have stopped to look, and some are seen pointing. It's 1942, and we're in the skies over Japan. An official Japanese army photographer shot pictures of four hazy, self-luminous, or very bright objects of spherical shape hovering in the sky above a flight of Japanese bomber aircraft. It's 1942, and we're in the Solomon Islands. While in the Solomon Islands, U.S. Marine Corporal Sergeant Stephen Brickner sighted a staggering number of UFOs laid out in virtually an enormous rectangle. They were in rows of 15 objects long by 10 objects deep. It's 1942, and we're on the Tasman Peninsula. An RAF pilot sees an object that looks like a singular airfoil of glistening bronze color with a dome on top. It's October 14th of 1943, and we're in Schweinfurt, Germany. US B-17s of the 384th Bomb Group had started a bombing run over Schweinfurt, Germany, when they ran into a formation of scores of small silvery discs, about 1 inch thick and 4 inches in diameter, flying towards the bombers. Major E.R.T. Holmes reported that one struck the tail of one of the aircraft, but without effect. It's October 14th of 1943, and we're in Pushkin, Russia. Soldiers saw a disc-shaped object hovering high in the air above aircraft. It's 1943, and we're in Qingshan, China. A dome-shaped UFO that emitted a white light was seen flying 20 feet above the ground. February 22nd, 1944, and we're in Washington, D.C. Franklin D. Roosevelt writes a top-secret memo on White House stationery for the Special Committee on Non-Terrestrial Science and Technology. Both the title and the content clearly allude to extraterrestrial life, the former using the word non-terrestrial, and the latter talks about coming to grips with the reality that our planet is not the only one harboring intelligent life in the universe. March 18th, 1944, and we're at Mount Vesuvius, Italy. During the 1944 eruption of Mount Vesuvius, a cigar-shaped UFO was seen around the ash column. August 10th, 1944, and we're in Palembang, Sumatra. Captain Alva Rita was piloting a B-29 bomber based at Karagapur, India, on a mission over Palembang, Sumatra, when his right gunner and co-pilot noticed a sphere, probably 5 or 6 feet in diameter, kind of like a Foo Fighter, a very bright and intense red or orange color. It constantly throbbed about 12,500 feet off the starboard wing. It kept up with the B-29, then flying at 210 miles per hour. Rita tried to shake it off his plane, but it stayed in the same relative position until, after about 8 minutes, it made an abrupt 90-degree turn and accelerated rapidly, disappearing into the overcast. It's August of 1944, and we're in Christchurch, New Zealand. A nurse at a train station noticed an upturned saucer nearby. She approached it, looked through a rectangular window, and spotted 2 humanoid figures not quite 4 feet tall. A third figure stood just outside an open door. When the humanoid saw her, the being drifted through an open hatchway, and the saucer shot straight upward. It's 1944, and we're in the skies over the Bass Strait. Mr. T.R.H. Royal was piloting a Beaufort bomber over Bass Strait when a dark shadow appeared alongside and kept pace for 18 to 20 minutes. The object seemed to have a flickering light and belched flames from its rear end. It maintained a distance of 30 to 50 meters from the aircraft before accelerating away. During the event, all radio and direction-finding equipment is said to have malfunctioned. It's 1944, we're in the skies over Germany, and Allied pilots are seeing more Foo Fighters.
They were just like orange, yellowy footballs.
Yeah.
They were glowing, a yellow, little bit of orange coming into it, and all of a sudden they were following us, and we dived and they followed us. We twisted, we climbed, and they followed us.
So it was just as though they were intelligent then, and they seemed to know by changing direction.
I mean, they were in control.
Yes.
And after, you saw that after 50 miles, and we lost 14,000 feet in height, they started to fade away.
Yes.
But at times they put on extra speed, and when they sort of, they're going along, and when they did that, there was sparks, things coming out of the tails. Or behind them.
Very interesting, yeah.
Very interesting.
But what they were...
Yes, you don't know.
I never...
Did you ever think it was the other side that had a new...
I thought they were probably rocket... you think a lot about this, and I wonder whether they were controlled anti-aircraft shells.
Right,
And
yes.
of course, no one's ever spoken about this.
No. That's
I wonder when
quite-
they were controlled anti-aircraft shells, controlled by
Yes,
radar.
yeah.
But no one ever
No one
mentioned,
ever mentioned
and nothing's
it.
been mentioned about
No,
this
not
since,
ever
have they?
since.
It's July 16th, 1945. We're at the Trinity Test Site near Alamogordo, New Mexico, where the world's first nuclear explosion occurs.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that.